Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Bacon. Welcome to the show, y'all. Not every road to a cage is paved with blood. Some are paved with paper, clean, crisp, and quiet. The kind of crime that feels like a whisper. Not a gunshot, but it'll get you just as dead, just as locked away. This is a story about a kid named Dion. He wasn't a banger. He wasn't a fighter. He was a quiet kid with a good heart and a sharp mind, stuck in a life that was a size too small for his dreams. He worked at a big box store, stocking shelves on the graveyard shift, the fluorescent lights humming a sad and endless song. His life was his mom. She was sick, a sickness in her lungs that made every breath a struggle. The medical bills were a mountain, and Dion was trying to climb it with a shovel. He worked double shifts, picked up side gigs, but he was always just short. He was a good son drowning in a sea of a quiet and relentless desperation. He saw the other life all around him. The kids on the block with the new cars, the fresh kicks. He didn't envy their violence. He envied their freedom. The freedom from the quiet and constant worry that was eating him alive. One night, an old head from the neighborhood, a dude named Smooth, saw that look in his eyes. Smooth wasn't a banger either. He was a thinker, a man who had built a small and comfortable empire on the quiet cons. He saw the desperation in Dion, and he saw an opportunity. "You're a smart kid, Dion," he said, his voice a low and easy purr. "You're working hard, but you ain't working smart. The world ain't built for hard work. It's built on paper, on systems. And a man who understands the system, he can make it work for him." He started to school him. He took him under his wing, showed him the quiet hustle, the check cashing game. The plan was simple and brilliant. They'd get their hands on business checks from stolen mail. They'd wash the ink off with a special chemical, leaving a clean and legitimate blank slate. Then they print a new name, a new amount, create a perfect and fake ID to match, walk into a bank, cash it, and disappear. "It's a victimless crime, kid," Smooth said. "We ain't hitting people. We're hitting a bank, an insurance company. They're so big they don't even feel it. It's just paper." Dion was hesitant. He was a good kid. He believed in right and wrong, but he was also a desperate kid. He saw his mother's medical bills on the kitchen table, and the line between right and wrong started to get a little blurry. Smooth didn't push. He was a patient fisherman. He just planted the seed, and he waited. The wait wasn't long. His mother had a bad spell, ended up in the hospital for a week. The bill was catastrophic. It was the final and most brutal nail in the coffin of Dion's good intentions. He went to see Smooth. "I'm in," he said, his voice a dead and unfamiliar thing. "Just once, to get my mom right. Then I'm out." Smooth just smiled, that slow and knowing smile. "That's what they all say, kid," he said. "That's what they all say." He was about to teach Dion a new kind of math, the math of the hustle. And it was a math that had a way of adding up to a long and brutal sentence, a sentence that was paid for not in dollars but in years. The first job was a test, a tutorial in the art of the con. Smooth was a meticulous teacher. He didn't just give Dion a check and an ID. He gave him a character. "You're not Dion today," he said, handing him a flawless-looking driver's license. "You're Michael Peters. You work in construction. You just got paid, and you're in a hurry to get to your kid's soccer game. You're a regular guy living a regular life. You walk in there and you believe it. Because if you believe it, they'll believe it." The check was for $5,000. To Dion, it was a fortune. He sat in the passenger seat of Smooth's car, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. He had spent his whole life being invisible. And now he was about to walk into a bank and be the most visible person in the room. "Breathe, kid," Smooth said, his voice a calm and steady anchor. "Remember who you are. Michael Peters." "You got this." Dion walked into that bank, the air cold, the silence deafening. He walked up to the teller, a young woman with a bored expression. He slid the check under the glass, his hand shaking just a little. She looked at the check, at the ID, at him. Her eyes lingered for a moment. And in that moment, Dion's whole world went into slow motion. He was sure he was caught. He could feel the sweat beading on his forehead, but then she just nodded. She typed something into her computer. She counted out $1,500 bills, and she pushed them under the glass. "Have a nice day, Mr. Peters," she said, not even looking up. Dion walked out of that bank, the cash a hot and electric weight in his pocket. He got back in the car and he just sat there, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He had done it. He had walked into a bank, told a lie, and walked out with more money than he made in 3 months. It was the easiest and most terrifying thing he had ever done. Smooth just smiled. He took his cut, a cool $2,000. He handed the rest to Dion's. "See, kid," he said, "paper. Just paper." Dion went home that night a different man. He paid his mother's hospital bill in cash. He told her it was an advance from the warehouse. The lie came easy, and the look of relief on her face, man, it was a powerful and addictive drug. It washed away the guilt, the fear. It made the crime feel righteous. He had told himself it was a one-time thing, but the taste of that easy money, of that freedom from worry, it was too sweet. He had crossed a line. And he knew deep down that he was not going back. He was a part of Smooth's world now. A world of quiet and clean and devastatingly effective crime. A world that was about to pull him in deeper than he could have ever imagined. One job turned into 10. Dion became Smooth's top earner. He had a gift for it. He was a natural actor, a chameleon. He could be a construction worker one day, a landscaper the next. He had a calm and steady presence that didn't raise any red flags. He was a ghost, moving through the city's financial arteries, siphoning off a steady stream of cash. His life and his mother's was transformed. The mountain of debt was gone. She had the best doctors, the best medicine. The worry that had been a permanent fixture on her face was replaced by a quiet and hopeful peace. And every time Dion looked at her, the guilt of his own choices was washed away by a wave of a fierce and protective love. He was doing this for her. It was a lie, but it was a beautiful one. Smooth started to bring him in deeper. He wasn't just a runner anymore. He was a part of the operation. He started to teach him the art of the wash, the delicate chemistry of erasing ink without damaging the check. He taught him the intricacies of forging an ID, the subtle details of a hologram, the feel of the right kind of plastic. Dion was a quick study. His sharp mind, which had once been wasted on stocking shelves, had found its true calling. He was an artist of fraud, but the business was getting too big for just the two of them. They needed more runners, more faces. And Smooth gave Dion a new responsibility. Recruiter. "Find someone you trust, kid," he said. "Someone who's hungry but not stupid. Someone like you." Dion thought of his best friend, Ray. They had grown up together, 2 boys against the world. Ray was a good dude, but he was stuck in the same and grinding poverty that Dion had been in. He worked 2 jobs, was barely keeping his head above water. He was hungry, and he was loyal. Dion told himself it was a way of helping his friend. A hand up, not a handout. He was just sharing the opportunity. He was a master at the art of justification. He met Ray for a beer, and he laid out the hustle, using the same and seductive language that Smooth had used on him. "It's clean, man. It's a victimless crime. You just walk in, you walk out. easy money. Ray was hesitant. He was a straight arrow, but he was also a desperate man. And Dion was his best friend, his brother. He trusted him. He agreed to do one job, just one. And in that one and faithful decision, the chain of their shared and criminal destiny was forged. Dion was no longer just a soldier in Smooth's army. He was a general recruiting his own men. The operation was growing. The money was getting bigger. And the risk was getting higher and more dangerous with every single and fraudulent transaction. The paper trail was getting longer, and it was a trail that was now leading not just to his own door, but to the door of his best friend. With Ray on the team, the operation doubled in size. They were a well-oiled machine hitting 2 or 3 banks a day, the money flowing in like a river. Dion was the man behind the curtain now, washing the checks, creating the identities. He had become a master of his craft. But success breeds complacency. They started to get sloppy. They used the same bank branch twice in 1 week. Ray got nervous on a job, fumbled his words with the teller. Small things, but in this game, small things get you a big sentence. The first real crack in their perfect crime came from a simple and human error. A teller at one of the banks they hit was a sharp-eyed old woman who had been on the job for 40 years. She saw something in the ID Ray had given her, a small and almost invisible imperfection in the hologram. She didn't make a scene. She just made a note. And she called the police after he left. The cops now had a high-quality surveillance photo of Ray, and they had a piece of a bigger puzzle. They started to connect the dots to see the pattern of similar check cashing incidents across the city. A quiet and methodical investigation began. Dion and his crew didn't know it yet. They were too busy celebrating their success, too high on the easy money. But the net was starting to close around them. The next job was the one that brought it all crashing down. It was a big one, a $50,000 check. The score that was going to set them all up for a while. But the ID that Dion had made for it, he had been in a hurry. He had been careless. The quality was not his usual and perfect work. Ray knew it. He felt it. The ID felt wrong in his hand. "I don't know, man," he told Dion. "This feels risky." But Dion in his arrogance just brushed him off. "It's fine, man. Just walk in there. Be confident. You got this." Ray walked into that bank, his heart a cold knot of dread. He gave the check and the ID to the teller. The teller looked at it, then looked at a picture that was taped to his computer monitor. A picture of Ray. A be on the lookout alert from the police. The teller didn't say a word. He just pushed the silent alarm button under the counter. Ray saw the subtle shift in the man's eyes, and he knew it was over. He turned and ran, but the doors were already locking. The cops were already on their way. He was trapped. Dion, waiting in the car outside, saw the cop cars swarm the bank. He saw them lead his best friend, his brother, out in handcuffs, and in that moment his world collapsed. The clean and victimless crime had just claimed its first and most devastating victim, his own and only friend. The paper trail had just ended, not in a bank vault, but in a cold and unforgiving jail cell. The arrest of his best friend was the bucket of cold water that finally woke Dion up from his own, an arrogant delusion. This wasn't a game. This wasn't a victimless crime. This was real. And the consequences were a life sentence for him and for the friend he had pulled down with him. He went to see Smooth, his mind a chaotic storm of panic and guilt. He expected his mentor to have a plan, a way out, but Smooth was a ghost. His apartment was empty. His phone was disconnected. He had seen the writing on the wall and he had disappeared, leaving Dion to take the fall. Another lesson in the brutal and unforgiving logic of the streets. There is no loyalty. There is only self-preservation. Dion was alone now, hunted and haunted. He knew the cops were coming for him. Ray was a good dude, but he wasn't a hardened criminal. Dion knew he would talk. It was only a matter of time. He spent the next few days in a paranoid and desperate haze. He thought about running. But where would he go? He had no money, no connections. Smooth had been his whole world. He went to see his mother. She was doing better. Her health improved. She saw the look in his eyes, the hunted and haunted look of a man at the end of his rope. "What is it, baby?" she asked, her own and maternal instinct sensing the trouble he was in. He wanted to tell her. He wanted to confess, to unburden himself of the lie he had been living. But he couldn't. The shame was too great. He had done all this for her. And in the end, he had just created a new and even more devastating kind of pain that was about to crash down on her. He just hugged her, held her tight. "I love you, Mom," he said. It was a goodbye. And they both, in their own and unspoken ways, knew it. He went back to his own and empty apartment, and he waited. The knock on the door came at dawn. It wasn't a loud and violent raid. It was a quiet and polite knock. 2 detectives in suits, their faces grim. Dion opened the door. He didn't run. He didn't lie. He just surrendered. The game was over. He had played, and he had lost. And as they were cuffing him, he thought of his friend Ray sitting in a cell, his life in ruins. He thought of his mother, her heart about to be broken all over again. And he thought of the lie he had told himself, the lie of the victimless crime. There are no victimless crimes, there are only victims. And he and everyone he had ever loved were now among them. The county jail was a cold and brutal introduction to a world Dion had only ever seen in movies. The smell of disinfectant and despair, the constant and dehumanizing noise. He was no longer a smart kid with an angle. He was just a number, an inmate, a piece of meat in the grinder. He saw Ray in the child line. Their eyes met for a brief and painful moment. There was no anger in Ray's eyes, just a profound and heartbreaking sadness. The look of a man whose life had been destroyed by his own and foolish trust in his best friend. Dion's public defender laid it all out for him. Ray had confessed to everything. He had given them the whole and sordid story of their operation, and he had given them the name of the man at the top, Smooth. But Smooth was a ghost, and the feds needed a kingpin. They offered Dion a deal, the same deal they always offer. "Give us Smooth," they said, "and we can help you. You help us land a big fish, and we'll knock some years off your sentence. And your friends, it was a temptation, a lifeline." But Dion was an old school soul in a young man's body. He had already betrayed his best friend. He wasn't going to betray his mentor too, even a mentor who had abandoned him. He refused the deal. He was going to take the weight. It was a foolish and prideful and ultimately meaningless act of a street code that had already been broken. But it was the only piece of his old self he had left to hold on to. The trial was a quiet and tragic affair. Ray took the stand and testified against his friend, his voice a low and monotone whisper. He laid out the facts, the details, the story of 2 boys who had been led down a dark path by a man who had promised them a shortcut to a better life. Dion just sat there and he listened. He didn't fight. He didn't argue. He just accepted. This was the price of his choices, and he was ready to pay it. The judge was a hard and unsentimental man. He saw 2 young men who had been caught in a web of greed. He sentenced Ray for his cooperation to 5 years. And Dion, for his silence, his refusal to give up the man at the top, he sentenced to 20. 20 years in a federal penitentiary. As they led him away, he looked at his mother, sitting in the front row, her body racked with sobs. He had started this to save her, and he had just delivered her a new An even more devastating kind of pain. The check cashing scheme was over. The victimless crime had claimed its final and most tragic victims: a friendship, a family, and young and foolish lives. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.